Hey, Doug and Pat here with another episode of the Wealthy Gym Owners. And today we're going to talk about what it takes to make the jump from being a $200,000 a year training gym to a $500,000 a year training gym. Because we see a lot of people in our industry kind of get stuck around that $200,000 a year mark. And they're very capable. Obviously, they've done a lot of things right to get there. I mean, you can't get a gym to that point without doing some of the things that you really need to do right to build a better facility or a bigger facility. But there's a bottleneck somewhere. So we thought this might be an interesting opportunity to just kind of pull back the curtain on what the difference is between a $200,000 a year gym and a $500,000 a year gym are. So you kind of have this roadmap that you can see, hey, this is what I need to do if that's you. And these are the kind of steps I need to take in order to get to where I want to go. So, Doug, I mean, you do this every day with Project 500 guys. That's where a lot of them come in, and we have a pretty clear and effective roadmap to take people to a $500,000 a year facility. So let's just start there.
Yeah, so I think as gym owners, I know we think of revenue on a monthly basis often. So just so we're speaking the same language, I'm thinking most of our folks come into us somewhere in that 10 to 15K range per month, right? So annualize that to 200K. And then we're trying to get to that 40-ish K a month where I think there's a lot of freedom that comes at that level, right? And that's ultimately what a lot of us are after. There's a lot of freedom and flexibility that comes at that level that is just not reality when you're doing 15K a month. And as you said, Pat, I think getting to 15K a month is proof itself that you've done a good job, because you don't just get to 15K a month magically, it can come through a lot of inefficiencies, right? Meaning you're just an extremely hard worker. You're a grinder. You can grind yourself just working lots of hours, training lots of hours to that 10 to 15K mark. So the first thing I like to look at is what from a marketing perspective are we doing for lead gen, right? Because oftentimes when we get new folks into Project 500 and I'm doing their onboarding call and I ask them what they're doing for marketing, the answer is often nothing, right? Which, to be fair, is why they probably joined the program. And so certainly excited to help with that. However, I'm not going to say you don't need marketing to get to 15K, but you can get away with just word of mouth and referrals. So one of the major differences is starting to implement consistent marketing strategy every month, so that we're not just sitting back playing defense and hoping that we get a referral or hoping that we have some word of mouth. There's a lot of hope that can stay around if we don't end up playing offense and starting to proactively generate leads.
Yeah, I think for years I've seen so many people in that kind of category, and inconsistent marketing is like a hallmark of those people, right? Like they'll, even if they do some of the things right, they don't do them consistently. Maybe instead of having a referral or reactivation plan every month, they'll do each of those once or twice a year, just when something kind of triggers their interest in it, right? They listen to a podcast about it, or they talk to somebody else who did it, and so it motivates them to do it, but it doesn't become part of their monthly plan. And so, like when we talk about people at that stage, they've got a lot of what they need to be successful. Some of it's just not having structure and consistency and focus to do it well and do it all the time.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing I thought of when we're brainstorming the differences between these and what I see with our folks that do get to the 30, 40, 50K plus versus being stuck at that 10 to 15 range, even 20 range, is putting, so you start to get consistent marketing and then putting people in to a complicated model, right? Putting people into a model that is, you're trying to serve everybody. You're stretching yourself thin because you're running all these different time slots, you're running all these different types of sessions. And although that feels like I'm trying to help more people, in reality, I think some of the magic of getting past this stage is really simplifying and not feeling like you need to do everything, right? There's a feeling at this level from an owner operator that you have to do everything. And the reality is you don't. Not to say it's not going to be a challenge or it's not going to be hard, but if you can focus on, I'm only going to market towards this one avatar and I'm only going to deliver my service in this one model, it actually makes your life, not only does it grow the business, but it makes your life a lot easier, because if I'm only marketing to one avatar now, my marketing becomes much more effective because I'm speaking my copy, my message is only to that. My creative, my images, my testimonials are only about that client. All of my strategies can be lasered into that market. And then operationally, when we look at the model itself, I'm not having to have all these different time slots and all these. I need to have a coach that can run a small group and a large group and one-on-one. And it can just really complicate things. So I would rather stack the schedule with a singular model. And now I'm only focused on perfecting that one model.
If I think about the common characteristics of those folks, it's like I don't know anybody who gets stuck in that 10 to 15 kind of category that is good at all three of the following. They're not planning, consistent marketing, and consistent follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if I've ever met anybody who gets stuck there. I mean, you see some people, Colin McCullough is an example, who pass through that stage that are really good at all three of those things. But I don't think I've ever met in 20 years of doing this somebody who's stuck at that's good at all three of those.
Yeah. Yeah. And the follow-up one, I think, is the sleeper, right? Because you can, I use the term playbooks a lot. And I think coming from sports background, most of us in this industry, I feel like it's a very common thing for us to have sports backgrounds. And in sports, you have playbooks. And when it's time to call that play, the play, there's still going to be audibles. There's still going to be, hey, that gap's not open, so I'm going to go run over here, right? Like there's the creative aspect of it, but we're not going in blind with everybody just on a go route, right? So with that, it's like we have playbooks for a lot of things, especially on the lead gen side. It just comes down to implementation and consistency of that's usually it's the consistency of implementing those playbooks. Follow-up is very interesting because follow-up, although there's scripts and playbooks, it's sales, right? I'm trying to sell you on why you should inconvenience your schedule and walk through my doors, right? There's even before I sit down and sell you on buying a membership, I need to sell you on, hey, your life's busy, you're crazy, you got kids running around, you got this going on. I need you to pause and block off 45 minutes to sit and meet with me at this location. And there's a sales conversation to some degree that needs to happen to get there. And so the developing the art of that, I feel is certainly challenging to get a gym owner to, as you mentioned, Colin, being able to use that skill to graduate from, I'm not just sending the automation, but I'm really moving that conversation forward into the sales process.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we think the answer to escape that level is automation, and you kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, you got here because you are a hustle person, a person who's a relationship builder. Everybody knows you, you know everybody, and that's part of the magic that's worked for you to this point. And then we automate the soul out of the business, and you're like, well, we forgot that this is still really a personal business, and automation and technology plays a part, but it can't replace you. It just has to augment you.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And I would say another difference that we see at the two stages or kind of moving past the 200K to get to the 500K in regards to marketing and sales Obviously, we talked about the consistency of marketing. We talked about the follow-up. But when we're following up with people, having a singular way for them to start, I find often at the early stage, kind of that 200K stage, it's like, well, you could do a free workout, or you could come in and do a consult, or you could hop on the phone with me, or how about a free week? And the reality is, operationally, that drives you bonkers. So pick whatever your sales mechanism is going to be, whether it's an in-person consult, a phone person consult, a free session that you sell after. Frankly, we have clients, we have clients do all three of those and they all work. I don't think there's a magic, like you have to do it this way. I think the key is, if I have 20 leads that I'm following up with, I'm trying to all get them to this one thing. Whatever that one thing is, usually for most brick and mortar gyms, it's some type of appointment that has a consultative sale to it, right? But I'm not having 16 different options that they can start with. Really simplifying that sales process is a huge part of it.
I mean, the great part about the simplifying sales process, building a consistent marketing, is this is the engine that feeds your ability to build a team, to actually scale, to fund ad spend, so you can create that kind of flywheel effect. So talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, the flywheel effect is an analogy that I've been using a lot recently. Like any analogy, it's not perfect, but I think it really sits in a lot of minds of our gym owners, where at the beginning, it's hard to get that wheel moving, right? And you're doing all the strategy, and sometimes you're not even seeing the benefit of it. But the more that you can implement consistent marketing that's more fed into the flywheel, the more you can simplify the sales process. Now that wheel's turning, there's less obstruction with that wheel turning, right? So it's turning faster. And obviously, the faster it turns, the more new clients it's spitting out on the backside of it. So I think getting that flywheel going, and then the hardest part is getting it going, right? And it's the runway of, if you're going to do paid ads, it's going to take 6 to 12 weeks to really see a good ROI. Do you hopefully get leads right away? Yes, but in order to get like awareness in the community and really good cost per lead, it's going to take 6 to 12 weeks if you haven't done it before. Just like you send out one offer, it's not going to be a home run. It's going to have to be consistent offers every month that you pick your head up 12 months from now and you got 10 clients from those offers, right? So that's really the flywheel effect, is I'm injecting these strategies in, and eventually that flywheel spinning and spitting people out. The key to that, though, is, imagine you take a break and you stop all this, and now that flywheel has stopped. Now you have to restart it again and put all that effort in, as opposed to keeping it going. Even keeping it going is, I'm not going to say easy, but once it's spinning, you got paid ads running in the background, you got your offers scheduled. It tends to keep spinning and keep spitting out clients, rather than what happens often at that 200K stage is we don't see results right away, or we see results and then something doesn't work. And so then we just completely stop. And now that flywheel has stopped spinning.
Yep, for sure. So you got that in place. And really, I think from my perspective, that all kind of comprises the engine for everything. So talk about like team and role, because that definitely is something that evolves between 15K a month and 40K a month.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, hopefully, unless you're a unicorn, if you're doing 40K a month, you got a team to help you out, right? That's part of the goal of this, is to build. It doesn't have to be a crazy big team, but build a small team where you don't have to be tied to doing everything yourself. So, typically at that 15K mark, most of our folks, it's them doing training, and they maybe have like a part-timer, right? And maybe that part-timer is taking over like a couple nights a week, so that you don't have to be there every night. And you continue to kind of graduate in a way where you're decreasing your training hours. The biggest thing I stress at this stage is it's not an immediate decrease of your time, right? We want the instant gratification of, I've hired a team member, so now my life becomes easier. The reality is there's that stage in between where I'm still I'm still hustling because now instead of you bring on a team member, let's say that they're going to coach the evenings for you. And you're like, great, I don't need to be in the evenings anymore. Not true. Because what ends up happening is if right away you peel off, now they're they don't know what good looks like. They don't have any leadership. They're not being held to any standards. Retention starts to drop, etc. So now you're having more clients leave, you're having management issues, etc. So I always say for every hour that I'm going to decrease in training, I'm going to spend that hour in leadership, team development, co-coaching with this new coach, clarifying what their roles and responsibilities are, showing them what good looks like. And then 6 months from now, 3 months from now, whatever, there's no perfect timeline, but at some point, then yeah, you can peel back a little bit. But I find that's a common mistake at this stage is we hire somebody and we're like, okay, done. And now we go back to doing other stuff rather than continuing to invest in them for just a little bit longer so that they can be a strong part of our team.
Yeah, the thing that I come back to, and I know you've heard me say this countless times, but it's like we should be the best people on the planet at developing our coaches. I mean, we coach people for a living. We help people become whatever they aspire to be, and we have a process to do that. And we can apply that same kind of process, but just with a different curriculum and do the same thing and build these wonderful teammates, but we approach it in a completely different way. It's like I'm burned out. I want to I'm going to pay to not have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And that approach rarely, if ever, works.
For sure. For sure. And the other angle that I would want to make sure we hit on as far as commonalities that we see at the 40K level that don't yet exist at the 15-ish level is having I hate to use the word, but having a system or having a playbook for how the company does things, not how Joe the trainer does things. And what I mean by that is oftentimes when you're bringing in part-timers, or some people start with like independent contractors, you have all these people kind of piecemealing together what is somewhat of a business, right? So coach in the afternoons doing his own programming, his own sessions, coach in the mornings doing her own programming, her own sessions. Maybe she's texting the clients on her phone to schedule. There's no cohesive system for how the company operates. So it doesn't need to be complicated, but for example, things like what is the company's scheduling system, right? Do you have a common scheduling system where all clients use the same scheduling system, follow the same scheduling process? Programming, right? It's not everybody doing their own version of a program. It's a team-wide, a company-wide programming system. The session experience, that really is a major difference where, if I look at a gym that's doing 40K, yeah, they have the marketing dialed in. Yeah, they've developed a team. But if I walk in at 8 a.m. and take a session with one of their coaches and walk in at 5 p.m. and take a session with a different coach, other than the personality of the coach, it's the same experience. Versus at the 15K stage, if I work with the owner, it's amazing. If I work with somebody else, it's a completely different experience. And that, again, from a simplification perspective, is a really important thing to build out so that everybody's kind of going through that same journey.
So, I mean, we've talked about kind of the standards for the business. We've talked about the engine that drives it. We've talked about creating a kind of an evolved role for the owner and having a team. And hopefully, if you're in that under 20K stage, whether you're doing 5, 7, 10 grand a month, or you're kind of stuck in the teens and don't know exactly how you're going to break out, hopefully this gave you some context to what it takes, because we see this time and time again. We see people make these jumps. We've got a collective group of people in boardroom who have all passed through this stage to get to where they are now, which is beyond that $500,000 a year mark. And then we've got plenty of people in Project 500 who are installing all the things we talked about right now and making that climb. So It's possible. It's not magic. It's not mysterious. It's the stuff that we just alluded to. You just have to be able to put the blinders on and stay the course. I mean, frankly, that's why Project 500 exists, is to give people a very clear roadmap. So they don't look for the shiny object over here, chase every other tactic over there, and they say, okay, no, I'm just going to install this, and it's the surest path to having the business, the lifestyle, the impact, the freedom, the wealth building opportunity that I want. So certainly you can do it on your own, but if you'd like our help, I mean, you're always welcome to connect with us and give Project 500 a go. I think you'd be really happy if you did. And that's another episode of the Wealthy Gym Owners with Doug and Pat signing off.